Welcome to Sweatpants to Suits, the podcast where we dive into the journeys of career professionals, uncovering the secrets to transforming from sweatpants mode to suits success. Join us as we explore personal stories, insights, and strategies for cultivating a growth mindset and achieving your vision of success. I'm your host, Jerry. Are you ready to up your game? Let's dive in. Richard Wilmore is on a mission to create an entertaining, judgment-free zone where creative people are celebrated. He is a creative director of Make Your Day Richer, a consultation platform where he coaches podcasting, talent booking, audio production. Today we're going to talk about how to make a presence for oneself, networking advice, building connections, and podcasting. Richard, it's a very good day to have you as a guest. First of all, I'd like to hear, how did your journey begin? How did your story start?
Oh gosh. Like every 10-year-old boy, I wanted to be a talk show host, which I found out was not like every 10-year-old boy. But that's really what I always wanted to do. I wanted to have fun is really what I think my goal in life was. I didn't have a very fun childhood. And so I thought maybe I can have a fun adulthood. And that's how it started.
Wonderful. It was a childhood passion that led you to where you are right now. I understand that you were a former talk show host. Well, how can you make a presence for yourself and how to become heard?
Yeah, like I said, I always wanted to be a talk show host. And in 2016, I started my own show. I actually renovated the basement in my house and made it into a TV studio. And I would invite people over to talk, artists and musicians. It was a variety show, like a daytime afternoon talk show. And I did it not thinking about anything like lighting, cameras, editing. I just filmed my first interview and thought, oh crap, what now what? It never crossed my mind that I had to do something with this footage. And so that's kind of where it started was, I need to do something with this. And what do I do to make this out there and to have that presence? And so I taught myself how to do that.
Wow. So it was all self-taught. Wonderful. Yeah. You come across a lot of these talented people. When you book for talented people, which topics do you find guests book for the most often?
I think people are drawn to really interesting stories. So I think a lot, and maybe that's just because that's sort of where my love goes, is to the arts and entertainment industry. Because, creatives always have interesting, insane stories. So I think as soon as I get a client, because that's what I do now, I don't have my show anymore. I book for shows. As soon as I have a client that's in that creative field, a lot of hosts will come and grab them up quickly because there's always fun content in creatives.
Just to follow up, interesting story. Do you mean like overcoming an adversity story type of story? Do you see people listen to those kind of stories the most?
Yeah. Stories like that, or just, how they got to be where they are, or, for musicians, there's always a horrible gig or something that happened. Same thing with actors, comedians. So there's always something that crazy that one happened in their lives.
Wonderful. I took a list at your the guests that you helped book for. Some of these people are from Fortune 500 companies and to freelancers. What are some of a common icebreaker topic that you often ask to help get to know them better?
I think for people that don't have quote unquote regular jobs, how did you even know your job existed and what brought you? It's the same thing like with me. What do you mean? How did you get to be a talk show host? That's not normal. So how did you get there? And oftentimes for me, it's how did you even know that job existed? Because how do you end up with a passion to end up in some of these jobs. So that's always, I'm just curious of how they even found out how the job even existed.
How their job even existed. Wonderful. And with these Fortune 500 company people, do you see a difference between the freelancers that you work for and these type of people? Are they more technical?
I think it depends on they're all technical in their own right, right? It's just kind of different a focus on what's technical. And so I think they're all very focused and they're all very driven. And that's one of the reasons why they want to be out there talking about what they do because they're so passionate about it. So they all have that common ground of being really passionate about whatever area they're in.
Oh, so those are two common traits, focus and driven.
You know,
What are some effective places or platform you network to find guests for yourself and for your clients?
I'm on a lot of there are a ton of Facebook groups out there. I have my own Facebook group where you can come in, find guests, find hosts. So there's stuff like that. There are websites, and also just like actual networking, like business networking, because everyone has a story. Everyone likes to hear themselves talk, and everybody likes to share. And it's a really good way to market yourself or your business. That's a little bit different than, Facebook ads and Facebook stories and stuff like that. Like it's a fun way to do it.
Wonderful. And what type of real life places would you recommend people to go to network with people?
Hmm. I just started a networking group and we met at a coffee shop. I think those are always fun. Your local chamber of commerce is a great place to start. Or just small, like within your community, there are usually smaller networking groups within that. And find like what you're interested in. It doesn't necessarily have to be business related, but just start going out. If you love pickleball, join a pickleball group and see who's there. You never know who your neighbor is.
Cool. So hobby group, chamber of commerce, coffee shops. Got it. And what are some effective? So you meet this person. He is very interesting. How do you follow up with new connections after networking events?
I like to meet with them one-on-one. Like I'm a huge coffee lover, so anybody who wants to go out and have a coffee with me, I am game to do that. Or jumping on a Zoom call, like just talking to them after, because a lot of times in the networking groups, it's so quick and it's so rushed, and you don't really get a chance to tell all you want or hear everything. So connecting after in any way you can, even if that's a phone call, I think is really important.
Oh, getting a call to them, sending them a message. Cool.
Yeah.
After following up, and how can you like just maintain connections?
Hmm. I think good ways are social media, LinkedIn, and really actively engaging with them on where they're posting and not just following someone and then never liking or commenting because it helps them, right? Like comments
Right.
and all that stuff helps them promote, and that's such an easy way to engage with someone so they at least know you're still watching them and you're engaging them that way.
Cool. Disengaging in the post makes a difference. And you said about these different type of social media platform. If you're trying to make a connection, where should you start? Should you start on Facebook or should you start on LinkedIn?
I think it depends, I think something that people forget or don't think about is that when they're starting something that they have to be on all the social media platforms, and then you get overwhelmed with that because there are so many now, and then you kind of don't put 100% into any of them. So where's your audience? Like where are they active? And then focus on those. You don't need all of them. So it depends, I think, on your business category where your people are. A punk rock band might not be on LinkedIn, but they're going to be on on Instagram maybe. And so that's where you find them. And so I think you kind of have to do your research on where your audience is. And then if you're trying to network with someone, where they're actually posting and engaging with their audience.
Well, cool. And are there any advice for anybody that want to network? What are some common discussion questions that they could help break the ice?
When they're at a networking event?
Right, yeah.
I think listening to someone and not speaking. So yeah, because people, like I said, like love to be heard. So if you take the time to listen to someone and not think about what you're going to say next and just listen to them and be curious about their story and their business, that's going to leave an impression because they're going to know that you kept space for them, as opposed to just like butting in or telling your story and making sure they get your sales pitch, because they'll come around and they'll talk to you and ask you those same questions at some point. But being very careful to listen to them and to give them the space.
Listen
it'll make
more.
them feel important. Yeah, listen more.
Do you think it would be impolite for you to like take your sales pitch to a networking event? Do you think that's being dishonest, or do you think that's all right as well? Like when you first meet someone?
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for that, but I think, and maybe that's just my personality, that I don't like to have something like pushed on me like that. I really like, I think especially in the small business world, you choose people because you trust them and you relate to them and you feel comfortable around them and you like their personality. So really being able to showcase that and not feel like you're just there to throw your business down someone's throat and get them to be your client, because you really want to build relationships with people that'll actually last longer than you probably expect.
Being interested in that person and that sale just naturally comes, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Building connection takes a lot longer.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's worth it, because they're going to stick with you. If you just want a quick $100 from someone to do something, great. But if you actually want something that's going to build and be lasting and really bring in income for you, and also referrals, if you have happy customers, they're going to also tell their people how great you were. So I think taking the time, and it's hard when you rely on the business and the income, but I think spending time with people and giving them the opportunity to fall in love with you, like that is really important.
It sounds like that you would thrive on referrals rather than getting good reviews. Or are they both sort of connected?
I think they're connected, like if you're getting referrals, it's because someone has a really good review of you. And so I think they kind of go hand in hand, that word of mouth advertising.
Just a question out of curiosity. Do you, for your business, do you thrive on referrals, or do you thrive on advertising on different platforms?
I do really well with going out referrals and meeting people either virtually or in person, not necessarily like advertising in the like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, whatever. Like I do really well with, oh, I hired Richard to do my podcast and I love it and you should too.
Oh, more referrals than ads.
Yeah, for me, yes. Yeah.
Do you think that going to places and network with people, do you think that's also way cheaper than getting ads and more effective?
I don't know about cheaper because I mean, some networking groups are pretty expensive to get into. And so I don't know about cost, but for me, I would rather feel out someone's personality to see if we're even going to mesh to work together, because what I do for people is very one-on-one like this. I'm on cameras with them. They're not just sending me something and I make something and send it back to them. There's a lot of back and forth for me, and in-person stuff and virtual things that we're speaking a lot. So I need to make sure that our personalities vibe. But that's me.
Wonderful. To see if you can gel well with the other person.
Exactly.
And when you book for these talented people, do you do like a initial phase where you meet them on Zoom first to see if you gel well with them, or do you just take the chance and have the interview with them?
I do, because I meet with them because I think it's important. I'm representing myself in this transaction, and I'm representing both sides. I'm representing, a talent, and I don't want to book them on a show and they're not a good interviewer. Some people are just not good on camera or can be coached. I have a whole coaching series. If you've never done it and you're not sure what you would talk about or how you should talk or lighting and all of that stuff. So I definitely meet them to make sure that they actually know what they're going to talk about once they show up.
Cool. So you would prepare a list of questions for them ahead of interview?
Yeah, I mean, I think people get very overwhelmed when they're going on a 10-minute interview because they think that they have to say everything they've ever known or everything that's ever been written or everything they've ever done in their business. And then it becomes so much talking that a listener will tune out because they're trying to get every soundbite out. So I help them narrow down, okay, you have a 15-minute interview. What are the two things you want to talk about in that interview? And then really crafting what those talking points would be.
It almost sounds like a speech. You have to sort of memorize these tidbits before you go on the interview.
Yeah, because there are nerves when you go on an interview and then you start rambling and then you're 15 minutes away from what you actually started at and you're confused and the host is confused and the audience is confused. So it really is a dance that you have to do to make sure you're succinct and clear in what your interview is even about.
A good balance.
Yeah.
And how do you calm these nerves? That's a great question to ask right now.
I think it takes practice turning nerves into excitement and figuring out if what you're feeling is excitement to do something or if you're scared out of your mind to do it. And because those can be very confusing in your head of what that is. And so making people calm, part of my job is to make people calm and excited to go talk about themselves. Because, as a host, you're not there to make your guest look anything but amazing. So you have to trust that the host knows what they're doing. They're not going to ask you anything you don't know the answer to. And so you're there for a reason, and just making them know that they are the expert in their field.
And these interviews, how long do you see them last for? 15 minutes? Where do you see some go over 30 minutes, even an hour?
Yeah, I just produced a podcast this afternoon that was supposed to be about 30-40 minutes, and it went on for an hour. So I think that's what's fun about podcasts and interviews and shows like that there is no time limit, but that also is important because you can go on forever, and then you're talking about a bunch of stuff that, like you can lose an audience very quickly, especially in the virtual world. So I think it depends on the topic, I don't think there's a set time for an interview. I think it depends on who it is and what you're doing. But I think it's when you're getting ready to either conduct an interview or be interviewed, you have to really be smart about how much time you think that topic needs.
How much time? Being concise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do you see longer interviews do better than shorter interviews, or do you think that it doesn't matter as long as you get the quality? It's It's just what the listener likes to listen, what not, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think quality is the most important thing. And then you can break that up into small clips for different formats as well and different outlets. So uh yeah, I would say it kind of both, you know?
Kind of both. Finding the time, finding that sweet spot.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, knowing when to stop talking and knowing when to stop asking questions, right? Like
Right.
you have to figure out how to do that, and that can be tricky.
It just takes practice.
It does.
How long have you done podcasting for?
I did my first one in 2016.
2016. Holy
What is
cow.
that? 8 years?
Eight
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Do you think that your podcasting got better because you upgraded your equipment, or do you think that your content got better?
Both. I mean, when I started, I had no equipment. So it definitely got better. Because I didn't even know how to edit I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know anything about anything other than I knew how to ask people questions. Um, and so as I learned, I think everything got better. I upgraded sets, I upgraded equipment, and then that's just part of the process, you know? Like you don't have to have top end and have everything set in order to start doing something like this. You just have to start. You have to be excited to start.
Just be excited to start. And that was actually one of the things that actually I ponder a lot on. I used to think that podcasting costed a lot to study, but after I got in the field, I just need a really good mic and a
Yeah.
computer to start, right?
Yeah, I mean that's really it is have really good content, have something to say, have good content and have a good microphone. You know? Uh and that's what people are showing up for because you can always listen to it and fun backgrounds and all of that fun stuff is exciting and it's helpful, but it's not necessary.
It's not necessary to start with a fancy microphone, but any microphone could do. Just get through the door, right?
Yeah. Yeah, just start it and make sure that you don't. I look at my first episodes and I want to take them offline because they're just the content is good and the like set all of that stuff is great because that's what I love, to set design and talking to people. But you sometimes could barely hear us and you could barely see us because the lighting was bad.
Oh,
And
you
so
started with a video podcast too.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Do you think, do you feel that having a video podcast is better than an audio podcast where they both tend to do well?
I get asked that question a lot because I think it depends on what your podcast is about. Like podcasts have come so far now that they're TV shows. They're filmed in big studios and have audiences and lighting and cameras and they've come so far from the original podcast days, which is really like radio shows, you know, where it's just audio. So you have to figure out like is my podcast worth watching? Like what are people watching? If it's a very visual, I hosted an arts and health podcast for a long time and we were making art. So that had to be visual because we had to show you what we were doing. But if I have a podcast about, I don't know, something boring that has no visual effect, do I need to film it? I don't know. You could, but what are people watching? You stare at a camera? I don't know. Is that fun? That's up to you to decide, but it's not necessary. I don't
A
think.
lot, a lot of this come from self-decision. Whether you like it video or whether you like it audio, you have to experiment with it too.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And now we have things like Spotify that you upload your video and it takes the audio and so you can do both. But I don't think it's necessary.
I think with Spotify, there's a tricky part to it because the analytics is not that great. So
Mhm.
it's hard to find out what your audience preference is, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I do both. I watch some of them, and then I have some that I'm learning from. So I don't I'm they're more like business education. So I listen to them while I'm in the shower. So I feel like I'm working while I'm in the shower and I'm learning something, but I don't need to watch it because we're talking about a topic that has nothing visual about it.
I think this is a good key takeaway as well. Referring back to the beginning where we learned about the talented people being passionate and focus driven. If you're really passionate about podcasting and networking, you have to just research on your own. You have to be in this topic,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And some people love to talk, but don't love to be on camera. And that's fine too. I've booked guests on both types of shows where they show up with their hair done and the host is not filming. They're only using audio. So I think it's really about your preference and what you think your audience wants or what they're telling you they want.
What they're referring back to the audience, what they really want, and
Yeah.
also communicate with the host and guest effectively, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yes, it's been surprising as I've started this side of my business how sometimes unclear hosts are about the expectation of the guest. And so that's really important to make your guests feel comfortable as possible. To know what they're getting themselves into. You were great. You had the questions, you had like communication, all of that was amazing. But that doesn't happen for all hosts. And I think it's very important to make sure your guests feel really comfortable when they start the recording session.
thank you so much, Richard. It has been an absolute pleasure hearing your stories and your podcasting lessons, networking lessons. They're very valuable. Thank you so much for this opportunity to interview you today.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.